Hi, everyone. Welcome to The Wheel of Mind, a character point of view reread podcast dedicated to Robert Jordan's The Wheel of Time series. This season, we've been taking a deep dive into Moiraine's point of view. I'm Lajara Dane of the White Oddjaw.
Hi, and I'm Giskel Semerus, a scholar from Ilion. Now, I want to give you a quick spoiler warning. We don't always use spoilers, but when we do so without telling you. So if you've not read the entire series, we really recommend you doing so before listening to this podcast. Now, today we're here to discuss chapters 4 and 5 from The Great Hunt. I'll get us started with chapter 4, which is entitled Summoned. Moiraine is in her rooms in the Palace of Faldara, preparing for her meeting with the Amerlin's seat. She studies her image in the mirror and works to maintain a serene facade in spite of the questions rolling in her mind. True to her character, she tarries when there is an insistent knock on her door, waiting even for a second knock before opening it, to accompany Anaya Sedai of the Blue and Leandrin Sedai of the Red to the Amerlin's apartments. Anaya is a friend and greets Moiraine warmly, while Leandrin announces the summons to the Amerlin and remarks upon the ward that Moiraine keeps around her apartment to keep out sisters. As they walk, Moiraine asks Anaya of gossip, and they discuss the outbreak of false dragons. There have been 3 in the past 2 years, and now 3 all at once in different countries. Along the way, they encounter Lady Amalissa, who is sister to Lord Agelmar. Moiraine is an old friend, and as they talk, Moiraine sees in the background that Egwene is sneaking a man into the women's quarters. She thinks to herself, if the girl shows as much initiative at Tar Valon, she will sit in the Amerlin seat one day. If she can learn to control that initiative, if there is an Amerlin seat left on which to sit. They take their leave of Lady Amalissa, and as they continue walking, the news turns to Camlin and Princess Elaine Tracan's abilities, as well as Queen Morghase's having to deal with the unrest by the Children of Light in Andor, and a populace that's growing more uneasy at the influence of Aes Sedai in their country. Talk then turned to the great hunt beginning again in Ilion for the first time in 400 years, and also some agitation among the sea folk who are looking for their prophesied Corrimor. The Aiel appear to be stirring again, and the sisters lament at having not one single sister among the Aiel to see what all they do. They know so little of them. And then again they talk of war on Almouth Plain and Toman Head, which is just a rumor, before arriving at the Amerlin's apartments. 5 sisters await in the anteroom. Varen Mathwin and Seraphel of the Brown Ajah, Carlinia of the White, Alana Mosvani of the Green, and a sister of the Yellow whom Moiraine does not know. None return Moiraine's greeting of the light illumine you all, sisters. Moiraine opened the inner door and went in to Liane, keeper of the chronicles, and Sioan Sanche, the Amerlin's seat. Sioan was seated before a table that bore the ornate chest containing the Horn of Valir. After the ritual greeting and the kissing of Amerlin's ring, Moiraine inquires as to their trip. The Amerlin talks of their having used the one power to create wind and current to speed their river passage, all to the detriment of local weather. They speak of Elida, who accompanied Elaine Tracan to Tar Valon, and the prestige that this has lent to the Reds due to Elaine's amazing strength and the power. Moiraine tells her of the 2 Rivers girls, how Egwene's power equals that of Elaine, and how Nynaeve's abilities dwarfs theirs. Sioan then tells of Elida's news that there was a young man whom Moiraine had taken with her, and of Elida's foretelling that he was more dangerous than Arthur Hawkwing. Then she relates of political tensions within the tower, much of it relating to Moiraine and her constantly going against tower custom and going her own way. A motion had been put forward in the tower by the Green Ajah that Moiraine should be turned over for contemplation under the care of the Red Ajah. It appears that old alliances within the tower might be realigning, mostly against the blue. The chapter closes with Sioan asking Lyanna to leave them in private, then warding the room against eavesdropping. She then throws her arms around Moiraine, hugs her tightly, and spoke of wishing for simpler times or for a simpler life. For if anyone else in the tower knew of their plans, they would be stilled.
All right. There's I think this chapter, coming hot on the heels of having read New Spring, is interesting to see how different their reunion is from all that time they spent together in the tower previously.
Yes.
But before that, there's also a lot of Robert Jordan just kind of either reminding, in terms of physical descriptions, reminding us who Moiraine is, but also introducing us to some aspects of her character, her background in the palace in Kyrian. This is something we would not have known up until this point as first-time readers. So at first it can seem a little kind of boring on a reread.
Yeah.
But there are still some details that I noticed that I enjoyed, even on a reread.
Oh, yes.
I like that, Moraine's got this gleam in her eye when they're talking about all the false dragons, because for her, that's just more evidence that she is right and that she's backing the right dragon in this case.
Yes.
Because as we learn, maybe in the next chapter, the pattern is going to continue to spin out false dragons as Tarmangaidon approaches, and it won't stop doing this, and it's going to keep accelerating the pace of false dragons until the true one actually proclaims himself. So, as we talked about before, Moraine's not easily swayed from when she's made a conclusion before. So she's already made this conclusion that it's Rand, and that we heard her whisper that when she was eavesdropping at the end of Eye of the World. And so she's got kind of, I think, a little bit of a confirmation bias, as we saw in New Spring as well. She's not really doing much of a disconfirming strategy in terms of she's not looking for evidence to the contrary, really.
Right.
But we see her confronted with potentially contrary evidence in book 3, and see just how much that shakes her to the core. So it's not a point of view chapter, so we won't end up covering it formally. So that's why I thought I'd bring it in today.
Yeah.
She hears somebody talk of Massima, but they worded it in such a way that they said something like, "There's a guy proclaiming the dragon down in Gildon," and she says she looks like she's seen a ghost, because Rand has already proclaimed himself by that point, and she thought she just heard of another false dragon, but it turns out it was Massima preaching about the dragon.
Right.
So she was shaken to the core with that fear that she must have been backing the wrong dragon this whole time, and doesn't seem to have considered a lot of potentially contrary evidence after she actually found him. It seems like when she got to the Two Rivers, she's like, it's one of these three. I'm just going to take them all with me, figure the rest of it out later.
Right.
Yeah, so it was that little... I felt like I could read a lot more into that gleam in her eye after having done such a study of her character previously.
And with me, of course, this is the first time in this book Moiraine has been introduced.
Mm-hmm.
So Robert Jordan obviously gives us a little background on her, and like I said, her appearance and things like that. How even she felt so lucky to have had a shawl in her belongings there, even though they've traveled light and done all these different things. And he goes a little into her physical description, which we didn't recap because we spent a lot of time with Moiraine. We know what she looks like, but you would expect that at the very introduction of this character to this book, in case someone had not read Eye of the World and they just picked up The Great Hunt, you'd at least have some clue, what the woman was like. But then one of the things I love is, even though there's very little action in either of these two chapters, 4 or 5, there's I guess a lot of world building or contextual things that go on.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of times with many authors, what they'll do is someone will begin waxing pedantic. They will start going into teaching mode, and they'll teach the simple farm boy or whomever the main character is, all these things, just kind of spell out the world for them or spell out the situation for them in certain things. And it always comes off kind of campy to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's a cheap way to introduce the reader to many of the aspects of this world. What we have here instead is these ladies who are all very experienced, very world wise, and they're gossiping basically about what's going on in the world. And it would be natural, it seems very natural, that if you were Moiraine, you would ask one of the other Blues, hey, what all's going on? I've missed a lot of things. but really it's a way to introduce the readers to all of these things that are happening in the greater world. And I love that. I love how they just kind of weave all that together. There are some things you see about Maureen's personality I like as well. Again, the way she does not lie about anything, because obviously she cannot.
Mm-hmm.
But when Leandrin remarks about, well, why is your room warded where sisters can't come in? Um, she just says, well, it's warded against all. Many of the servant women are curious about Aes Sedai. I don't want them pawing through my rooms when I'm not here. There was no need to make a distinction until now. But she never said, I don't trust sisters not to go in my room either,
Right.
but
And
she
she
really
didn't
didn't.
say, oh, it's not meant to be for sisters either.
Right. Exactly.
She
She
could
did
have
not
said
say
that.
that. Right. Yeah. She just went into the explanation of, a possibility. Never said this is all of the possibilities. I do like that. And he just kind of threw that in there, and it made, uh, um, oh, I've forgotten her name. Yeah, it made Leandrin very curious as to what was going on in there.
Mm-hmm.
But her behavior was making Moiraine very curious as well too. She looks at
Yeah.
her and kind of looks at her expression, and here's the Desdemar again. She's reading body language and reading contextual clues, and thinks to herself, "What is this girl up to?" Later on, she in the same chapter, about the time they get to the Amerlin's apartments, and Leandrin, she opens the door, kind of I guess to be dramatic, that she's bringing Moiraine before the Amerlin, and Moiraine just kind of walks by and nods to her as if Leandrin's opening the door for her and holding it for her, kind of making her subservient. And Leandrin gives her such a look, and Moiraine thinks again, what is this wretched girl up to?
Mm-hmm.
So she's really trying to read Leandrin, and she can't. And really we can't either. There's some things we'll get to in next chapter that left me scratching my head the first time through. Now, if you've already
Yeah.
read it and you know a little about her character, it's very clear what's going on. But we'll save that for a little later in the podcast. But yeah, I love how again, without even spelling out directly the things about Moiraine and her personality, it begins to come through just in the situation she's in, the way she reacts to the situations. And as to what you said about her bias, confirmational bias about the Dragon Reborn, um, she does see the false dragons coming up, so many being spun out of the pattern at once like this, as a sign that the dragon is about to be reborn. But I wonder, does anyone else not see this as a sign that Tarmangaiden is approaching? Because I don't think most of the sisters, except those of the Black Aja, have any idea just how bad things are getting, how close this is getting.
Mm-hmm.
Many of them may think, well, this is still hundreds of years away. It's going to happen someday, but they don't know. So Moraine has this, but she doesn't seem to put other contextual clues together, like when they talk about the Koramur, the Sea Folk.
Mm-hmm.
No one puts this together with being the Dragon Reborn. They think of, well, there's nothing about that in the Carathian cycle. There's nothing, to tell us about that. So they just kind of ignore it instead of
Yeah.
realizing, hey, there are a lot of other prophecies out there that we don't have. There are a lot of other things pointing to the dragon that we don't know about. Of course, there is that stuff with the Aiel, but they don't know anything about the Aiel
Mm-hmm.
and
Even when they do
Karakhan.
contact the other prophecies and texts and know about them, they don't seem to think that they have the same level of importance. And
Right.
also, I think it is just, as Moiraine tells Egwene when she's training her for the first time in the Eye of the World, that Aes Sedai are just people like any other. They have the same variety of personality traits you'd see across any other people. Just because they wield the power, it doesn't mean that they're all good or all bad or whatever. And so I think one of just people's biases that we see is we have a harder time focusing on something um, that seems far off in the future. We have a very hard time
Yes.
preparing for those types of longer, later, incentives or threats. And I think a lot of fantasy stories use that idea of, or the fantasy stories I enjoy, rather, I think ones that successfully kind of understand the way people politic, It shows that people aren't really going to change their behavior no matter what the signs are. People are going to be even more political and squabbly and not less if there's a threat facing the whole world.
Yes.
And so I think that even if there are plenty of signs, Aes Sedai, just like anybody else, are not really oriented towards those kinds of things. I just think people aren't very good at, we're not like programmed to respond to something that's that abstract and future oriented.
Right. Even though that is the purpose for the White Tower,
Yeah.
that's what they do. That's the entire founding of it.
Right.
People are still people, and the one thing that never changes, despite any amount of education, any amount of indoctrination, any amount of training, is the human nature.
Mm-hmm.
You still have that, and it's clear in the third age here as it is in our current age that people are still people. They get caught up in the day to day. They spend time worrying about what's going on right now, not how does this fit into the greater world at large. Yeah, very true.
And this isn't the only fantasy to do that. I mean, Game of Thrones, Song of Ice and Fire certainly does as well. There's the threat of the others or the White Walkers that people ignore in favor of the Game of Thrones. But then also a lot of other classic fantasy, like as you know, I've been reading Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn, and
Yes.
I'm in book 3, so I haven't finished it yet. But there's still there is a bigger threat, but people are still playing the Game of Thrones in a way. You still have people trying to deal with power vacuums, or you have people trying to employ cosmic forces just to gain political power and not understanding the cost of that to everyone.
Yes.
And actually, another thing that Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn does well, speaking of just fantasy that's kind of part of it, I think was written in parallel to some of the, as far as timeline wise, to the Wheel of Time, is that the info dump thing you were talking about, I think they also do a good job of avoiding that. Where you will have a war council where you might have some sagely person who has to tell everybody the context of why they're all getting together and what they're facing, and or you might have a manuscript, or you might just have letters sent here and there between different interested parties, and they don't start piecing all of their information together yet. And I think Robert Jordan does a really good job of that, of different characters have much different pieces of information, and it can be incredibly frustrating as the reader, just because you want everybody to know everything that you do.
Right.
So he does a good job of avoiding the info dump, and I think the stories I enjoy the most are the ones who make that feel more organic, and you're right that these conversations in this chapter do that pretty well for me.
Right. That in fact he was not only good at it, he was masterful at it. A way of informing the reader without telling the reader, but just by letting you watch what unfolds. It's and sometimes you do get frustrated that some of the characters don't know what you know, but yeah, it has a way of painting the picture and making it clear without, like you said, I didn't even think of the word info dump, but that's the perfect explanation for it, or perfect description for it. Without that info dump.
And along the same lines,
A couple of other things that just kind of jumped out at me when Moiraine is going to visit the Amberlin. Of course, most of the sisters are not there. Many of them are
most of the
resting
sisters
from
are
their
not there.
journey or
Many of them
whatnot.
are
We're given the view of these 5 that were there. Of course, it describes what the Browns are doing.
Of course, it describes
what Seraphel is reading a book, and Vera and Mathurin is sitting there drawing a picture of flowers. She found something she probably was not familiar with, and so she was recording that. And it was almost like they weren't even aware anyone had walked into the room.
It was almost like they weren't even aware.
I believe they were aware, but typical Browns, they weren't going to let you know they were aware.
Typical Browns, they weren't going to let you know they were aware.
Were there any others that jumped out at you from that?
Were there any others that jumped out at you?
I remember that
from that.
Carolinia is there, but she wasn't doing anything specifically. But I think she's one who dies from Cimarog torturing her warder later.
See, I forgot to look her up because,
maybe she died in a dream in Tel Riyadh. Some of them died in the nightmares. I think.
Some of them died. I will have to look that up. So the one that really jumped out at me was Alana.
Oh yeah, of course. I was getting to her next. I listed Carolinia first because I was the least sure.
And because she's of the white that you are. So.
Yeah.
And because she's of the white that you are. So.
Yeah, I mean, again, I know we've already given a spoiler warning.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, again,
my first time, and probably the second time through this, I didn't
my first
really
time,
tie that,
time through this, I didn't
with who
really
she was and the things she would do. What she did should seem kind of natural because you have Greens like to have a lot of orders.
Should seem kind of natural because you have Greens like to have a lot of orders.
For her to bond Rand with a water bond against his will, he didn't even know it was going to happen.
With a water bond against his will, he didn't even know it was going to happen.
Was there ever a good explanation as to why she did that? It seems like I remember telling some of her friends, but I don't remember what that was.
No, I don't either, and I think we'll probably have to just get to it when we're reading some other chapters. Yeah, I think she shows up in a lot of Perrin chapters because she and Varen go to the Two Rivers.
Yes.
So if we pick Perrin as a reread character at some point, we'll probably get to that. I don't remember for sure.
We'll have one of our very informative listeners who will tell us.
I'm sure.
I did not research that very fully. I listened to just a little bit about the things that she did in the series, the things
she was grieving. She was grieving from the loss of another warder, which we know is regular grief leveled up to be made, magical and much more intense. But that could be a reason, but not an excuse. I suppose.
That could be a reason, but not an excuse.
Yeah, I was also concerned by what seemed like Varen's complicity in that at the time when she was also there. It was like, hey, don't mind us. We just want to give you some healing or something like that. And I don't think she knew that's what Alana was going to do, but I didn't know that at the time. So I was very not much a Varen fan at that point. I'm not exactly sure why she did what she did. Maybe just one of those ways to try to control the dragon. Like, here's one way I can do it. I could compel him with the bond once I've got him bonded.
I've wondered about that because.
I've wondered about that because it's such a violation
without their consent.
You're violating one's mind that way without their consent.
I don't know how many of the warders have explained to them about.
I don't know how many of the warders have
explained. So it is consensual, but who knows how informed it is? Yeah,
right. So it may be typical not to tell them, hey, you're going to be able to feel what I feel, and you'll know where I am. You're going to be able to feel what I feel, and you'll know where I am. But it really came back on Alana. And in a way, you kind of
really came back on Alana.
You feel like it's justice. In a way, you kind of the way she would at times just basically curl up in a fetal position.
The way she would at times,
and when someone asks me about the pain, how does he stand the pain?
And when someone asks me about the pain,
and that's one of the things that stands out in my mind just from having read the series, not researching this part of it since, but just in memory.
This part of it since, just in memory.
She may have done it to try to control him. She may have done it. She may have done it to try to control him. She may have done it. She may have been a very impulsive person. But for whatever reason, that was not a good.
But for whatever reason, that was
not a good thing, not a good ending, and
not a good thing.
She paid for it dearly. And you say whether it was cosmic justice,
I guess you say whether
or not, she
whether
did
it was
pay
cosmic justice or not, she did pay. I love thinking about things like that.
Imagine that when she was in the scene, Robert Jordan probably already had some idea of what she was going to do, or that she was going to come up again, because he did so much more outlining. He's more of the architect type writer who does so much of that planning ahead of time, whereas the George R.R. Martin famously still hasn't finished any series because of this gardening perspective. He will put random people in a scene like that, and then he might go back later and say, I need somebody who was probably here at this thing and saw that going on, so let me go back and see what just red shirts I had in that scene and see if I can reuse them and develop them into somebody. So it could come off. If you didn't know the background of Robert Jordan's writing process, process, to me, it would come off that way. Like, wow, he just names a bunch of Aes Sedai that really have no characteristics, and then he can just pick from them later if he wants them to be important. But just having learned more about the process, I think that he probably knew Varen was going to be important. I mean, she is in just a couple chapters. And then knew that Carlinia was going to come up again. You know, he did a good job of conserving and reusing these characters. So even though there are so many of them, we might have some idea that we've at least seen those names before, and we could go back and find it if we wanted to.
And I found it kind of conspicuous too. The Horn of Valyr is there in the big chest.
The Horn of Valyr is there in
the Amerlin.
In the big chest.
And of course, between this chapter and next, if she does open it up and look at it.
Between this chapter and next, if she does open it up and look at it.
Their main focus. Now, you would think
that's not really their main focus. Now, you would think.
And I guess they both knew the importance of it, so they just didn't need to talk about it much. And I guess they both knew the importance of it, so they prophecies of the dragon. That the horn would be sounded, the dead would rise, the horn would be sounded at Tarmon-Gai'don.
The dead would rise and
be part of the final battle.
And be part of that final battle.
Still, to me, there should have been a little more wow factor over that.
There should have been a little wow factor over that.
Aes Sedai are,
but if there was
serene enough, they're just not going to show that.
Serene enough.
Moiraine is annoyed at first, thinking, things really might be getting out of hand here. I thought I had things under control, but why does she have the horn right now? Just in her thoughts.
I was going to reveal this to her.
I was going to reveal this to her. She wanted to spring that news.
I got the chill bumps again with the mention of Elaida, like I typically do.
Chill bumps again with the mention of Elaida.
Kind of a sidebar here, I don't have a clue who they're going to cast to play Elaida in the show. But I hope it's someone who can look serene and calm and still give you chill bumps, because that's what she does for me in the story.
That's what she does for me in the story.
She's just that type person. When it even mentions her, and that
she's just that type person. When it even mentions her,
Siobhan and Moiraine
both do
as well, because of their history.
Moiraine both do as well.
So with Lyanna in the room and Siobhan just kind of mentions it. Elaida, she brought Elaine, her brother, down from Andor.
She brought Elaine, her brother, down from Andor, and they're in the White Tower now.
It's kind of a way to say, listen, things are getting out of hand.
Kind of a way to say,
she does go into the Tower
things
of
are getting out of hand,
which is kind of interesting to us now after having gone through New Spring.
Kind of interesting
to us just no big deal
after having gone through New Spring.
This is really the first introduction in the story, the way it was written.
This is really the first introduction in the story,
the tension between the Ashes. If I recall correctly, I don't remember any of that Eye of the World. It didn't mention some of the Ashes.
I don't remember any of that Eye of the World. It didn't mention some of the Ashes.
It certainly did not.
I don't think it mentioned all of them.
And the alignments
and it certainly did not mention the tensions and the alignments of some against
some
others.
Of this goes back
but here we
1,000 years of the Reds
some of this
kind of being
back
aligned
1,000 years.
The blue and the green
kind of
usually
being aligned
siding with the blue.
The blue
and
the
here
green
we
usually
see
siding
the
with the
subtle
blue.
realigning of
And
the
here now we
Greens
kind of see the
Moraine's
subtle
out of hand.
realigning of
And they want
the
to turn over
Greens
to basically
out of hand.
have some discipline.
And they want to turn
have the
over
Reds
to
oversee the discipline.
have some discipline.
Kind of
have the
known
Reds oversee
for
that
being
discipline.
very stern.
Kind of known
So yeah, I
for
don't think
being
that would
very
go
stern.
well.
So
you
I don't
really,
think that would
really
go
get a
well.
sense of Moraine's dread, and
you really get a sense of Moraine's dread, and her just outright
basically,
thinking
I
to
will run
herself,
away
it's not
again
going to
before
happen.
that's going to happen. So
yeah,
basically,
and she sort of has the attitude of, well, I really just don't have the resources and time to think about that. What's going to happen is what's going to happen. We have to get this boy to the last battle, and so can't think about it. And I think that's sort of been her attitude since she left the towers. Like, there's bigger fish to fry. I gotta go fry them, and that's just too bad that somebody out there probably wants me to do some kind of penance. She has so little regard for law and consequences because she sees it as just so secondary to what she's got to do.
Secondary,
and so we've we've seen that perspective.
And so,
it's good in that it's not keeping her afraid. She's still going to do what has to be done, but it also has
she's still going to do what has to be
seen
done,
her doing some ethically shady things, all the sort of, compulsion type thing and little deceptive things she does with people here and there. And so the kind of stuff that could make first-time readers or maybe the characters in story very suspicious of her motives all throughout Eye of the World. I think something else that could make you suspicious about Moiraine and seeing her kind of relationship to systems and to relationship to systems and to morality and the law and things like that is that this chapter is the first time in the published order that we see her interact with any other Aes Sedai. She goes very much out of her way to avoid any others all throughout the Eye of the World. And so I didn't fully catch on to how suspicious that looks until I've been listening to the Wheel Weaves podcast, and in that one Dany is a husband and wife team, and Dany is a first-time reader, and so he's the husband. Brett is doing the best he can not to spoil her for anything, and so they're about.
That would be so difficult.
Oh, I know they do a great job with it. I know he does a great job of helping her avoid spoilers, and she does a great job coming up with little kind of theories and just really analyzing things. And so she pointed out that Moiraine, it seems like, does not play well with others. Anytime there's other sisters mentioned being anywhere in a city, she does not go to them. And when she heard that Rand met Elida, she kind of flipped out about it. And that was something
they intentionally got out of town very quickly.
They intentionally got out of town very quickly.
So we see here that she doesn't have a lot of regard for what other sisters think about her, and even when she knows that she is operating on the wrong side of kind of Tower custom and even law in some cases, and she hasn't really been thinking any of this time about not only consequences to herself, but she really wasn't thinking at all what kind of consequences that might have for Siwan. They've just been crossing their fingers and hoping that people wouldn't remember how close they were, but I guess that's because so many of the people who were in the tower back when they were novices and accepted are dead now, because otherwise I'm not sure why you would think people wouldn't remember that.
When the two of you kind of go against custom and
when the two of you kind of go against custom and
lockstep,
take the oath.
It's a difficult thing for most
together in
people to
lockstep.
Yeah, for sure. So they've been walking on thin ice this whole time, and Moraine's kind of lawless alignment isn't really helping, and that's something that Siwan brings up a lot in this both of these chapters. Mentioning Elida, though, circling back to that, because I had a note about her too. Siwan, I guess she has to say talk about Elida in certain ways in front of Lyanna, but she says something to the effect of Elida wouldn't hurt anyone but dark friends, or those that she believed to be dark friends. And I was like, wait a minute, can you even say that with the oaths? Siwan, the way that you interpreted her actions against you so maliciously, whereas Moiraine was like, yeah, maybe she was trying to help, but screw her. Siwan never for a second even remembered that Elida might have had any good intentions about them, and I just don't know how she could have said this. I kind of attribute this to Jordan hadn't fully had their entire history fleshed out yet, but that he had some idea that they were at odds with each other.
Or maybe in her heart, Siwan thought she would never actually, in her heart, though she may never like them or get along with them, though she may plot against them, she wouldn't do any physical harm to them. But of course, we find out later that's a very wrong analysis to make, especially coming from Siwan. I guess knowing what's coming, I guess knowing what's coming, and casting her down as Amberlin,
distilling and casting her down as Amberlin.
I dread that. I dread getting to that in this story. I dread everything to do with that. Which, of course, was their thoughts at the end of this chapter.
Which, of course, was their thoughts at
good time for me to, I guess that's leave off on chapter 4. That's all the comments I had on it. But it's still, it is very chilling to me.
Yeah, it really is. And as a first-time reader at this point, we wouldn't know what stilling is yet until we get to the very beginning of chapter 5, or even what stillable offenses are, or really the importance of all this shifting Ajah politics, which is why I didn't remember these things very well until I went to reread it.
Same here.
But with us having just read New Spring, it seems obvious now with all these pieces together that Siwan, with her, especially her kind of puzzle-solving ability, she would know what Moiraine traveling with a young Ta'veren man of a certain age would mean. And so we understand now, Moiraine's been wondering, why the heck is she coming here herself? We know why she came so quickly, on the pretense of needing to punish Moiraine. And in chapter 4, we're still kind of led to believe that. We don't see just how... I mean, only until the very end of the chapter we see that they were friends, right, on the first read through. Siwan's so good at putting together these puzzles, so we know that she must have put together that the time is nigh, all these end time signs that we were talking about that the other Aes Sedai were ignoring, and so she knows that she's got to talk to Moiraine stat. And so that's where we pick up, I guess. I can start my summary of chapter 5, The Shadow and Shinar. Stilled. Women bear it no better than the male equivalent, gentling, that we've already heard about. It's a nearly unspeakable punishment, but novices are made to learn the names and crimes of the only 2 stilled Amerlans and their reasons. Tetsuan for betraying Manetheren, and Bonwyn for attempting to use Arthur Hawkwing as a puppet. We're both raised from the Red, and were both succeeded by previous Blue sisters. The Red Ajah had always been bitter about this, and 4 of the past 5 Amerlans were raised from the Blue. The Reds may finally have their day of reckoning soon. That's kind of the atmosphere that's going on in the tower now. The horn having been found. How much time do they have before Tarmangana? And speaking of all these complications and end times, problems that are going on, Moiraine's behavior is causing more problems for Siwan. She's only sent 2 letters in all that time. One to say that she was going to the 2 rivers. So Siwan's like, cool, you must be getting the boy. Next I hear, you better be on your way here. But no, the second to say that she's going to Faldara instead of Tarvalin, right here next to the Blight. What's going on here, Moiraine? Have you given up on Project Dragon or what? Of course I haven't, Siwan. Have you? We're both at risk, but that is inconsequential. We can't afford to even think about the consequences to ourselves. This has to be done regardless. So the pattern took us where it did, and that's where we are now. And that leads into a discussion of how strongly Ta'veren this boy is. He has 2 Ta'veren companions as well, Moiraine shares. Why the wheel has already woven some gifts into our laps, such as the horn that you have right there for some reason that I'm not going to address. Siwan asks if they really have so little time, and explains why she has the horn. Lord Egelmar couldn't resist the temptation to sound it and try to storm Shale Ghul itself, so he turned it into me. Moiraine says, sorry to break it to you, but yeah, also here's a broken seal, so buckle up for the end times. And how convenient that Ilian just called the first hunt for this horn in about 400 years, so, our we dragons 2 Ta'veren buddies would love to be involved with sounding the horn. By the way, just some minor details. One of them is infected by Shadow Logoth, but I totally have it under control. Mordeth didn't touch him or anything, I swear. And the other one, he's got his own problems that he needs a distraction from that I cryptically won't divulge to you. But most importantly, Ilian is going to follow anybody with the horn. So we'll have the boys take the horn there. The dragon can follow them, and they will go have an entire army at their backs before he even proclaims himself. Siwan, the puzzle solver, though, foresees many potential roadblocks to this plan, and one of the biggest plot holes being, Moiraine, are you not going with them? And have you not thought of X, Y, and Z? Moiraine has another spin on this whole Ta'veren angle, though. This guy has little to no say in his path. It doesn't really matter if I let him wander around. We've got to trust that the wheel will weave as it wills. That's really all we can do. But anyway, we've been together, alone together, long enough to arouse suspicion, so let's meet again tomorrow, and I'll tell you everything you need to know, Maureen said as she walked out, trying and failing to look chastened because she has no idea what that even feels like. The rest of the chapter contains some boring white cloak stuff, a Leandrin point of view that confirms she really is up to something, something meaning doing the Dark One's bidding, and it ends with our first Pat on Fane point of view, although it's only a paragraph long and already makes me want to bathe after reading it. And thus ends Chapter 5, The Shadow and Shinar.
Yes.
Chapter 5, The Shadow and Shinar.
The first words of that chapter, still.
The first words of that
seemed
chapter,
to quiver in the air,
still.
almost visible.
The words seemed to quiver in the air,
put
almost
the tension
visible.
there. You know,
such a way to
visual
put the
imagery
tension
of,
there.
Such a just the horror
visual
that
imagery
instilled in them.
Just the horror that instilled in them.
But
I guess that's a pun.
I remember a few episodes ago you were talking about that. You spoke about how you wish they didn't view it as being so final that
how you wish
people with disabilities can still learn to have a life.
People with
function,
disabilities can still learn to have a life.
A disability from a supernatural aspect.
A disability from a supernatural
it would be considered to any practicing
still would be considered to any
to be able to feel
as a disability.
That the source is there, but not be able to touch it.
That the source is there, but not be able to touch it.
I imagine it would be
have that permanently burn out.
But you're right.
I imagine it would be
such a cultural thing there.
You're right.
That
it's such a cultural thing there.
I think they make it
kind of
more
horrible
in their minds than it really has to be.
More horrible in their minds,
and that's kind of sad. It's kind of sad that they don't.
And that's kind of sad. It's kind of sad that they don't.
How useful life could be after that, because there are people who
how useful life could be after that, because there are people who miss
whatever reasons,
limbs, eyes, what have you,
and they learn life is
whatever reasons, and
there are people who
they learn life
lose the love of their life and feel like they're emotionally they're just torn in half.
Of their life and feel like
there are reasons to go on living,
torn in half.
There are for the Aes Sedai to think just to lose my magical ability,
for the Aes Sedai to think just to lose my magical ability.
We see that most men who are gentle don't, even though they're not really raised
most men who are gentle don't, even though they're not
women
really
who are steeled don't.
That culture.
Yet at the same time, I would like to see more
acceptance. Yet at the same time, I would like to
you said that better than I could
more
several episodes ago. But
you said that better than I could.
It's one of the things that stuck with me with this. I came across
it's one of the things that stuck with me with this.
We discussed.
I came across.
Yeah, I actually have an update about that because we had a fan reply on Twitter. I guess not long after that episode was released, and I keep forgetting to address it. This is a perfect time to do that, and I will probably have to go call that person out on Twitter once I remember exactly who it was, and let them know. So they did remind me that there's somebody who seems to have moved on from being burned out in the series. So we do see that representation of people having to live with a permanent disability and being able to flourish despite those struggles. Satala Anan is an innkeeper that I think our characters meet in Ebu Dar, and that's when they finally kind of crack the case and realize all these women who were put out of the tower go somewhere out into the world and have this network of people who still channel. And it's also part of how we find out that the Oath Rod is what cuts your age in half, and that non-Aes Sedai channelers actually live much longer because they meet the kin, and some of them claim to be something like 600 years old, and Aes Sedai just don't even believe it. So Satala Anan just is one of those people who seem to know too much about the White Tower and about the One Power, and then we find out later that she had burned herself out and so had to leave the tower.
I'd forgotten her. I remember the kin in Ebu Dar.
Yeah,
I'd forgotten her. I remember the kin in Ebu Dar,
and no memory for it whatsoever. You'd think that would bring it back when you spoke of it.
Well, she's a character that I used to get mixed up with some of them, and I wasn't sure what her deal was for a while. She ends up in part of Matt's story for a while, I think. ends up in part of
she
Matt's story
helps
for a while. I think
him helps some Aes
she
Sedai
helps
escape Abu Dar when he rescues the ones who were collared as Damani.
He rescues
I think she's one who helps, and then they leave and go to the circus together.
Helps and then they leave and
I think so, but I also sometimes got her mixed up with
part of the
Boozer.
story.
But I also
I look
sometimes
forward
got
to getting to that part of the story
I have
again,
just
because
I have absolutely no memory of her.
that's something I have.
So I
just,
think she
I have absolutely no memory.
she
of her.
somehow helps keep the
So I
kin
think
secret,
she,
even though she can't participate in some of the stuff that they do. She helps, is part of that network of people who helps the girls who get put out of the tower find a place in the world. And she runs a successful inn. You know, she's a business owner, an active part of her community. So I thought it was awesome that somebody pointed out to me that Robert Jordan actually did represent that rehabilitation perspective well, that I sort of felt like was missing. I just wish we'd seen it in a more main character instead of one that's a little harder to remember.
Yes, but still glad it's there.
A little harder to remember.
Yes, but still glad it's there.
Yeah,
I like how.
Wow. Okay.
It
like
seems uncharacteristically Moraine, but how she's able to
it seems
kind of go with the flow with all the changes in her plan.
To kind of go with the flow.
For 20 years, she's been coming and going from the tower.
For 20 years, she's been coming and going from the tower,
carrying out this secret mission
by going her own way,
she and
carrying out this secret mission that only she and Siwan know about.
But when changes come up, she's able to really go with it.
But when changes come up, she's able to really go with it.
Is not. And maybe it's because she's
not
out in the field.
But it seems that Siwan is not. Maybe it's because she's not out in the field. Because she's kind of trapped in the tower,
when they talk about, all this time I've only had two bits of communication from you. All this time I've only had two bits of communication from you. On the second bit of communication,
the pull quote from that was on the second bit of communication.
Faldara, with a blight almost close enough to touch. Nearly 20 years of planning and searching, and you toss all the plans practically in the Dark One's face. Are you mad?
All the plans practically in the Dark One's face. Are you mad?
I kind of like that. Even though Moraine has always seemed so headstrong, so fixed, so focused.
Even though Moraine has always seemed so headstrong, so fixed, so focused. We know how she was able to, back in New Spring, basically commit treason against the tower,
leave Tarvalin and
countermand to direct order to
go out into the
leave
world
Tarvalin
for the dragon. We know how
go out into the world searching for the dragon. We know how later on she's able to,
knowing she was
basically sacrifice her life, knowing she was
disappear,
going to go
die.
into Tarangreal
I don't think she knew.
and disappear.
She would live, although
I don't
might.
think she knew.
For sure, as soon as I said that, something didn't sound right about it. But at least she knew it was going to be real ugly.
Right about it. But at least
she was going to go through some hardships, but she willingly sacrificed herself, walking out there that day, knowing what was going to happen. She had foreseen it. She knew it was going to happen. She walked out there anyway. She knew it was going to happen. So strong, and I love that about her. She's so focused,
so strong,
and I love that about her.
So focused, yet at the same time now we see
information came to him from Eye of the World. Yes, we're not going to talk
information came to him from Eye of the World. Yes, we're not going to talk about.
And then the whole thing about letting the boys go their own way for a short while.
And then the whole thing about letting the boys go their own way for a short while. I know it'll take them to Ilion and they'll reveal the horn. It'll take them to Ilion and they'll reveal the horn.
I don't.
But she doesn't really know that.
Seems so anti-Moraine.
It seems so anti-Moraine.
I like that she's at least trying to be flexible and trying to go with things and realizing that you cannot control everything and realizing. Now that seems to be a very un-Sedai
Now that seems to be a very
because it seems like they want to control things. They want to control
it seems like they want to
be
control
honest,
things.
we see a little of that manipulation.
And to be honest, we see a little of that manipulation.
Siwan. You pointed out several things she did not mention.
Siwan.
To Siwan, so
she's trying to manipulate her here. To Siwan, so she's trying to manipulate her here.
She was willing to,
but at the same time,
take all these plans they
she was willing to
take those papers,
take all these plans
they
worked for,
and go do something totally
different. Take those papers, wad them up,
because
throw them in the fire, and go do something totally different.
And
because
I like
that's what
that
the
about
situation
her,
warranted.
At the same time, that
is a hard road to hoe. That is a hard road to hoe. Right there.
Right. I had similar feelings about this exact same concept. I have a lot of notes about how, as stubborn and headstrong as and single-minded as Moiraine can be, I was also kind of surprised at and in admiration of her ability to start to relinquish control here. And I sort of didn't appreciate what you brought up, how she relinquished control to the pattern in a way and decided, oh yeah, okay, the pattern is steering us to the eye of the world, so let's go there. That's a great point that she did that. So I'm impressed with her ability to kind of relinquish control and try to leave things up to the wheel weaving, or at least pay lip service to doing so, because she is saying she's leaving it up to the wheel, but she's also kind of setting things up and still trying to manipulate people to put these pieces into play and thinking that this Ilian plan will work out. But I don't know. So she takes the lesson that she doesn't need to go with him and try to lead him to do something. And I do applaud her ability to back off and take a hands-off approach. Like you said, being able to do that with anything, relinquish control of a person, of an agenda of some kind, any of that is very un-Aes Sedai. But she's still kind of in that driver's seat, trying to arrange Mat or Perrin to sound the horn, or to at least take it, and then she knows that Rand's going to follow them, right? Because that's his buddies. I think she needs to be more of an advisor, so she's coming further away from what the White Tower's view of what their role should be for the dragon, but I don't think she's come far enough yet to realize she needs to be an advisor role to like a ruler in training. But now that I think about it, I'm not sure what she could do to get Rand to let her in as an advisor. I think there might have been a chance, even though he's such a stubborn person earlier in his story, but he got suspicious because of Tom being there. So Tom is an important mentor figure for him, but he injected some of that suspicion of Aes Sedai, which ends up being a healthy suspicion for Rand at some point, but it also gets in the way of Moiraine being able to, teach him anything. And he also listened to Baalzamon too much in his friggin' spooky dreams in book 1 that he didn't tell anybody about. Because he's like, they're going to use you, and then that's resounding in his head ever since then. So, I think if she's going to try to use anybody, I think she should probably leverage Rand's trust of Lan a little more and try to use that so that she can get a trusted person to be a little more of an advisor. And I wondered if she was doing that, but really I don't think that she is. I think Lan's relationship with him is genuine, because Lan is going a little bit rogue lately because of being into Nynaeve. And his commitment to the bond is a little weakened right now. So I guess there's a lot of things that we say that they should be able to do, but Moiraine's position is pretty weak here with somebody like Rand and with the influences that he's had. And Siwan's position is pretty weak because of how dangerous, how precarious her position is in the tower. And so it's just sad how few tools these two women have when they're the only ones who have been on this mission for the entire time. They're the only ones who survived and made it because nobody remembered they even knew what was going on.
Oh, you're right. Oh, I knew that, but I hadn't put that together. Yes,
you're right. I knew that, but I hadn't put that together.
Their hands are so tied. And so I guess that's really all Moiraine can do. I talked myself back into a circle saying, no, it's good that she's saying the will weave as it wills, but she needs to be less married to her idea of Ilian and the Horn too, and just maybe start studying the prophecies, which she does later in this book. So I guess, maybe she should have just gotten a head start on it a little earlier.
Kind of on the same thought that you had
kind of on the
I had made some notes here about the way they deal.
I had made some notes here about the way they deal
people in general,
or at least
the
their
dragon
viewpoint in
specifically.
dealing with people in general, but the dragon specifically.
He tries to explain to Siwan,
when
you cannot
Moiraine,
push him. He's stubborn.
He tries to explain to Siwan, you cannot push
the
him.
Manetheren blood was, so stubborn, but he's like a rock beside their mud. He's so much worse.
Like a rock beside their mud.
And Siwan says,
he's so much worse.
Then we'll handle him like a newborn babe. We'll wrap him in swaddling clothes and play with his toes if that's what you think he needs.
We'll wrap him in swaddling clothes and play with his toes.
In a way, that's kind of indicative of their view of
in a way that's kind of indicative
view of men for one, view of dealing with people,
view of men for one,
of trying to control the situation. everything is about
trying to control the
manipulation to get
situation.
people to
You know,
do what
everything
you
is about
think they need to
manipulation to
do.
get
You
people
do
to
kind of
do
what it takes to
what
get them
you
there.
think they need to do. You do kind of what it takes to
And
get them
even
there.
though at this point Rand is scared out of his
And
mind
even though at this point Rand
about
is
the
scared
Amerlin
out
being
of his
there.
mind
We learned
about
that
the
from
Amerlin
previous
being there.
chapters from his point of view.
Learned that
And
from
of
previous
course,
chapters
in the
from his
last
point of view.
chapter, I think we noted that
And of
Moraine saw
course, in the
Egwene
last chapter,
sneaking a
I think we
man
noted
into the
that
women's
Moraine
Yes,
apartment.
saw
I
Egwene
had a point
sneaking a
about that
man
I
into
forgot
the
to
women's
bring up, but it
apartment.
cracks me up that she didn't seem bothered by that. I guess that's another part of her, the Wheel Weaves attitude. She knows he's not really going to get away.
I tried to decide, did she know it was Rand, or did she think he was just she was sneaking a boyfriend in there? You know, and it didn't make that clear in that chapter. Maybe we'll find out in upcoming chapters. I've tried not to read ahead too much in our studies here, just to kind of stay focused on what we're doing. But still,
kind of stay focused on what we're doing. But
I wonder if it had been possible
I
to
wonder
get
if it had been
Moraine
possible
and Siwan to
to
sit down
get
in the room with him
Moraine
somehow, some
and
way,
Siwan to sit down in
and
the
just
room
assure
with him
him,
somehow,
listen,
some way,
we know Aes
and
Sedai
just assure him,
manipulate.
hey, listen,
That's not
we
what we're
know
trying to do here.
Aes
We
Sedai
know you're the
manipulate.
Dragon Reborn. We are
That's
the
not what we're
only
trying to do
two
here.
that
We
know
know
this.
you're the
Only two
Dragon
Aes Sedai
Reborn.
that know
We are
this,
the only
and we're
two
keeping
that
it a
know this.
secret.
Only two Aes Sedai
Now,
that
here
know
are the
this,
things the
and we're
prophecies
keeping it a
say about the
secret.
Dragon Reborn. You're handing
Now,
him the
here are
book.
the things
You're
the
at the
prophecies say about the Dragon Reborn.
if
You're
you have
handing the book.
questions, we'll
You're at the
answer them.
encyclopedia.
We don't know
If you
how
have
all this plays
questions,
out.
we'll
We don't
answer
know
them.
all the details, but
We
let's
don't
share
know
what
how
we do
all this
know.
plays out. We
Boom,
don't
boom,
know all
points
the
A, B,
details,
C,
but let's
D.
share
Let's
what
share
we
what they
do
know.
know. Boom, boom,
And
points A, B, C, D.
we are
Let's
not going
share
to
what they
push
know.
you. We're not going to tell you what to do.
And we are not going to
Because you're
push
the
you.
Dragon
We're not going
Reborn.
to tell
That
you
means
what to do.
we will
Because you're
help
the
you.
Dragon Reborn.
But,
That means
could they not have
we will
treated
help
him
you.
as an equal?
But, could they
I don't think
not
that's
have
within
treated
them.
him
And
as an
not just
equal?
these two,
I
but
don't think
within the
that's
tower.
within
You
them.
said something
And not
before
just
about,
these two, but within the
Moraine
tower.
going
You said
kind of
something before
against
about
the tower's
Moraine
policy on the
going
dragon.
kind of against
Does the tower
tower's
even have a
policy on the
policy
dragon.
on how they want to handle the
Does the
Dragon
tower even
Reborn?
have a policy on
I
how
don't know
they
that they
want to
do.
handle the
Yeah.
I
Dragon Reborn?
think certain groups have
I don't know
one
that they
idea
do.
and other groups
I
have another
think
idea.
certain
I
groups
think
have
there are
one
many
idea
among
and
the
other groups
Red
have another
who
idea.
would gentle
I think
him,
there are
even
many
knowing he's a
among the
Dragon
Red
Reborn, because
who
he's
would
a man that can
gentle him,
channel.
even though
I
he's a
think
Dragon
there are
Reborn, because
some
he's a
who would
man that can channel.
try
I
to
think
kill
there
him. We
are
know the
some
Black
who
Asha would certainly do
try
that.
to kill him. We know the
And we
Black
don't know
Asha
who's
would
in that
certainly do that.
group, right then
And we
at this
don't know
point.
who's
So,
in that group,
you know,
right
but
then
it's
at
like
this
out of
point. So,
all the things that went through their minds,
but it's like out of
just
all
sitting
the
him down,
things that
giving him
went
some
through their
information,
minds,
and saying,
just sitting him
we're going
down,
to let
giving
you
him
make
some
decisions
information,
here,
and
and we're
saying,
going to
now,
do our
we're
best
going
to
to let
stay
you
out
make
of it.
decisions
We will
here,
run point for
and
you.
we're
We
going to
will
do our
try to
best to
distract
stay out of
everybody
it.
away from
We
you
will run
and
point
let
for
you
you.
do
We
your
will try to
thing. It
distract
probably
everybody
still would
away
not
from
have
you
worked.
and let you do your
But
thing. It
it did
probably
not
still
enter
would
their
not
mind
have
to treat
worked.
him as an equal.
But
Because
it did not enter their
they
mind to
never
treat
do.
him as an
They
equal.
never treat anyone as an
Because
equal.
they never
Even
do. They never treat anyone
Moraine,
as an
as
equal.
much as she loves
Even
Siouan, she
Moraine, as
intentionally did
much as
not
she loves
mention
Siouan,
Pat Unfane.
she intentionally did not mention
She
Pat
intentionally
Unfane.
did not point out
She
some of the other
intentionally
things.
did not point out
Let's see, what was it I had
The
made
some of the
down?
Forsaken
other
are loose.
things.
The
Let's
Forsaken
see,
are
what
loose
was
and
it I
all
had
right.
made?
That is it. I had in my notes here.
The Forsaken are loose and all right.
She did not mention that at all. Why not? Why
She
not throw
did
that
not
little
mention
tidbit
that
in
at
there?
all. Why not?
Because they already know they
Why
have
not
people
throw that little
plotting
tidbit
against them.
in there?
They already know they have
Because they
Black
already
Aja
know they have
plotting
people
against them.
plotting
Hey, we
against
got
them.
some
They
bigger
already know
folks,
they
the
have Black
bigger players
Aja
coming on the
plotting
field
against them.
now.
Hey, we got some
Maybe you
bigger
should know
folks,
this,
bigger
Siouan.
players coming on the
Or
field
maybe
now.
that would
Maybe you should know this,
just wreck
Siouan.
all their plans. I don't
Or
know.
maybe that would
And here's the other
that
thing:
would just
when
wreck
the
all their plans. I
questions
don't know.
start cutting a little too
And here's
close
the
with the
other thing:
Dragon
when the
Reborn,
questions start
that's when
cutting a little
Moraine
too
pulls
close with
out
the Dragon
the leather
Reborn,
pouch and she dumps the
that's when
shards,
Moraine pulls
the
out the
Quillandar
leather pouch
shards
and she
onto the
dumps the
table
shards,
or
the
into
Quillandar
Siwan's
shards
hands,
onto the
whichever I forget the
table,
details. But
or into
and Siwan
Siwan's
realizes
hands,
what it
whichever I
is.
forget the details.
It's one of the broken
And Siwan
seals.
realizes what it is.
And
It's one of the broken seals.
of course, the Amerlin
And
is
the
quote unquote the
of
watcher
course,
of
the
the seals.
Amerlin is
And this is the first
quote
one she's
unquote
ever
the
seen.
watcher of the seals.
Because it did
And
mention in
this
this
is the
book
first one
nobody's
she's
known
ever
the
seen.
location of them
Because
since
it
the
did
Trolloc
mention in
Wars.
this book nobody's known the location of them since the
tower knows what the seals are, and
the tower knows
what
the seals are.
But they didn't know where they were.
And
those have been
what they're
misplaced over the
for, but
centuries.
they didn't know where they
And
were.
in chapter
Those have been
4,
misplaced
when
over the
Moraine
centuries.
is
in
heading
chapter 4,
to meet the
when
Amerlin,
Moraine
she kind of feels of that pouch, and the quote she said to herself
she
there
kind
in
of
her
feels
mind,
of that pouch,
whatever
and the quote
troubles
she
brought her
said
out
to
of
herself there in
Travalen,
her mind.
she will
Whatever
forget them when
troubles
I lay
brought
this
her out of
trouble before her.
Travalen, she will forget them when
So
I
she
lay
was
this trouble before
manipulating
her.
C1, even her best
So
friend,
she was
because when
manipulating
the
to get
questions about
herself
you
out of
bragging,
even her
trouble.
best friend,
right,
because
when the questions about the
when the
dragon get
questions
too
about the
close,
dragon,
you just dump this
when the
out.
questions about
She
the dragon
realizes
get
what
too
it is.
close,
boom,
You just
you
dump
just
this
change the
out. She
conversation.
realizes what it is.
Um,
Boom, you just change the
that's the
conversation.
Aes Sedai way, and I'm
Um,
sorry,
and that's the Aes
Vajra
Sedai way. And I'm
Sedai, I
sorry,
mean no disrespect, but
Vajra
that is
Sedai. I
that is
mean
how
no
y'all are trained
disrespect,
to treat
but
people, never
that is how y'all
as
train
equals.
to
And
treat
I
people.
wonder if they could have
Never
talked
as
to Rand and
equals.
gotten his
And I
point of
wonder
view
if
and
they
asked
could have
him what
talked
he
to
thought
Rand
his
and gotten
next
his
course
point
of
of view
action
and
should
asked
be.
him
Of course, at
what
this
he
point,
thought
we
his
know
next
it's get
course of
away from my
action should
friends,
be. Of
insult
course,
them
at this
so they
point,
will
we
leave
know
me alone.
get
I
away
Yeah.
from
can't
my
hurt them
friends,
and go off
insult
by
them so
myself.
they
And we
will
know
leave
that
me
doesn't
alone. I
work.
can't hurt
I'm
them
glad
and go
Moraine
off
gives
by
him something
myself.
to
And
do,
we know
but
that doesn't work. And I'm glad
maybe at
Moraine gives
least
him
giving
something
him
to do.
half
But
the information, something,
maybe at least giving him
so
half
he
the
can
information,
begin
something,
making decisions on his own
so
and
he can
trust them a little
begin
more.
making
Uh,
decisions on his own and
but I don't
trust
know
them
that
a
he
little
would
more.
have. I don't know that it would have made any
But I don't
difference.
know that he would have.
I think
I
at
don't know
least
that
it
it
would
would
have
have
gone a
made any
long way
difference.
between
But I think
toward
at least
preparing
it would have gone a
his
long way
idea
or
of what an
toward
Aes Sedai
preparing
is and what
his
they do.
idea
Yeah.
But
of what an
instead,
Aes
they
Sedai is and
followed
what
the
they do.
traditional route. You
But
manipulate,
instead,
you
they
push.
followed
Oh,
the
we'll treat him
traditional
like a
route.
baby
You
if we have to. If
manipulate,
you
you
think that'll
push.
work, well,
Oh, we'll treat him like a baby if
do
we have to.
anything
If you think that'll work,
except
well,
Give him
just
agency.
be
do
there.
anything
Right,
Yeah.
except
be there for him.
Give him
just
agency.
be there.
Anything except
Right,
that.
be there for him.
Yeah,
Anything except that.
you've got a great point there, and I think
You've got a great
that's,
point there,
welcome to
and
the wheel of
I think
absolutely no
that's,
communication, as
welcome
I've
to
seen
the
this
wheel of
story
absolutely no
called,
communication, as I've
because
seen
I've never heard that, but I
this
love
is
it.
frustrating now, and it's only going to
I've
keep
never
up
heard that,
for
but I love
This
it.
is
any time we read
frustrating now, and
any
it's
other
only going to
chapter in
keep
this
up
book,
for any
Yes,
time
or any
we
of these
read
books,
any
I'm
other
pretty sure,
chapter in this
because
book.
that's
Yes,
it is
yes.
the Aes
I'm pretty
Sedai
sure.
are the caricature of this perspective of
The
keeping
Aes
things
Sedai
too
are the
close to your
caricature of
chest
this
and
perspective
not
of keeping
communicating
things
anything
too
and
close
trying to
to your chest
subtly
and
push people to
not
do the things that
communicating
you
anything and
want and
trying to
set up
subtly
conditions so that
push
things will go
people
the
to
way
do
that
the
you want.
things that you want and
And
set up conditions so that
that
things
ends
will
up
go the way that you
backfiring
want.
for pretty much everybody. And as I've
That ends
mentioned
up
before, one
backfiring
of
for pretty
the
much everybody. And
kind of
as I've mentioned
morals to take
before,
away
one of
from
the
this series is that
kind of
when
morals to
people
take away from
communicate
this
and work
series
together,
is that
great
when
things can be
people
achieved.
communicate
And I
and
think
work together,
this
great things can be
perspective
achieved.
of
And I
being
think
too
this
quiet
perspective
about
of
things
being
and not
too
disclosing your real
quiet about
reasons why you
things
might want
and
somebody to
not
do
disclosing
anything
your real
is kind
reasons
of
why you might
tied in
want
part
somebody to do
to
anything
the
is kind of
broken
tied in
gender
part
politics
to
in this
the
series, which just seems an
broken
intentional
gender
part of the world
politics in
building
this
to me.
series, which
Yes,
seems an
yes.
intentional
Where
part of the world
the
building to me.
the men in the
Where
series tend to stay
the
quiet for,
men in the
macho
series
reasons. You
tend to
don't want
stay
to look
quiet
weak around
for,
your,
macho reasons. You don't
fellow
want to look
men.
weak around your,
And
fellow
the
men. And
yeah, they just don't even consider sharing their problems with each other.
Yeah, they just don't even consider
and we also see
sharing
what
their problems
happens
with
when
each
they
other.
do. Like we see
And
that
we also see what happens when
Matt
they do.
never
Like
really
we see that,
accepts Rand again once he
Matt
finds out
never
he can
really
channel.
accepts Rand again.
And so of
Once
course
he finds
Perrin
out
is
he can
never going to
channel.
admit that he has anything
And
weird
so of
going
course
on after
Perrin is
that.
never going to admit that he has anything
Wow,
weird
okay, I
going
see
on
what
after
happened when my
that.
friend came out. I'm going to stay in the closet
Wow,
with
okay,
my
I see what happened
wolfness
when my
now.
friend came out. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
my
stay in the
eyes,
closet
that's
with
just,
my wolfness
drink some
now.
bad water.
My eyes,
Yeah,
that's
just
Right?
pretend like there's nothing
drink some
different.
bad
So,
water.
the
Pretend like there's
masculine
nothing
culture there of
different.
having to just kind of, suck it
the
up,
masculine
Buttercup, keeps
culture
them
there
from being
having
able to
just kind
support
of,
each
suck
other
it
in
up,
the way that
Buttercup,
they
keeps them
really
from
could
being able
use
to
right now.
support each
And
other
then
in the way that they really
on the
could
side of
use
the
right
women,
now.
they're also
And then
quieter, but in ways
on the
that
side of
tend
the
to,
women,
if they're
they're
relating
also
to men,
quieter, but in
it's
ways
because
that
they kind
tend
of
to,
see,
if
they
they're
can sort of
relating to men,
infantilize men,
it's
and so they're
because
like,
they
why
kind
would
of
I bother
they can sort
explaining
of
things to him?
infantilize
You just
men,
need to
and so they're like, why would I
you
bother
know,
explaining things to him? You
the
just need
best
to
of men are barely housebroken, and they talk about men in
the
very
best of men are
infantilizing
barely
ways, like the way that
housebroken, and
Siwan
they
does
talk about
about
men in very
Rand
infantilizing
here.
ways, like the way that
And
Siwan
so
does about
they do have
Rand
that,
here.
like,
And
not
so
bothering to
they
communicate
do
their
have
needs
that,
to men because they
like,
should kind of
not
be able
bothering
to
to
herd them
communicate their needs
around
to men
instead
because
of
they should kind of be
communicating with
able to
them like
herd them
equals.
around instead
And
of
so Aes
communicating with
Sedai
them
are
like
the
equals.
caricature of that
And
feminine,
so
like
Aes
quiet
Sedai are the
manipulation. I'm not going
caricature
to
of that
express to you my
feminine, like
true
quiet
needs. It's
manipulation. I'm
interesting
not going
because that is kind of a feminine stereotype in the real world, but it seems to be for different reasons. So hyperfemininity of where you might not communicate your true needs and expect people to be mind readers seems to be built up as a protective thing where some women get sort of flack for expressing their needs, and they may have been brought up in environments where women are, girls are meant to be seen and not heard, and so that becomes a culture of not speaking up about anything because you might get punished when you do. But here it's actually the same behavior, but coming from a position of power, which I find really interesting. So, and it's just particularly sad that Moiraine is employing this with Siwan. As you noted, she's doing it even to another Aes Sedai, and just knowing how close they were, it makes me so sad that she's holding things back from her. You know, she didn't mention the Eye or the Forsaken, like you said. There's this wall of mistrust and all this maneuvering. Moiraine feels the need to manipulate and rile up Siwan into some kind of anger while she's despairing, instead of trying to comfort her as she would have done back when they were in the tower together. And so we see these patterns of behavior really harming people's relationships with each other. You know, it was beautiful when we could see Moiraine put down her walls enough to bond Lan, but she's only continued to build up walls between her and anybody else, and especially other sisters. But Siwan has had to as well. She's probably keeping plenty of her own secrets right here, because, you know, leadership in a place like the White Tower has to make a person hard, and she has no support. Leanne still treats her as her office, with none of their old intimacy from their friendship. And so the intervening years really haven't been kind to these women. There's these kind of social pressures that are not forcing, but influencing them to act in these ways, because that's how they've been socialized to relate to other people. But they've especially lost the ability to relate to each other as the deep, close friends that they were, and it's really also damaged their ability to cooperate and guide the dragon, just like you were saying earlier. If Moiraine had a more transparent communication style, that might actually work better.
When you brought out the kind of brokenness of the relationship between men and women,
kind of brokenness of the relationship between men and women, and how that was intentional in the author. That's one of the things that I had never thought of, never considered. I saw the analogy of
Saidar not being unable to work together anymore.
Saidin and Saidar not being unable to work together.
I didn't take it any further than that. But you're right, throughout the book, you intentionally shows this brokenness and how things could be better if they worked together.
Shows this brokenness and how
I guess in a way, my takeaway from this, a reflection of things that happen in our daily lives.
Also a reflection of things that happen in our daily lives.
Are many relationships that are not as close as they should be.
Are many relationships that are not as close as they should be.
They don't allow
people put up walls.
The one person they should open up to most. They don't allow that person to really know them.
Open up to most.
They use manipulation instead of communication.
Manipulation instead of
really the events of the story that frustrate us so.
Really the events of the story that
they're reflected in real life. I see. Now there are times you have to have some walls put up. I know.
Now there are times you have to have some walls put up.
When I've been in management and things like that.
Anytime when I've been in management and things like that in my work.
Something that I didn't really say that right. When I went into management in my career, there were certain things I knew that I could not tell.
There were certain things I knew that I could not tell.
So there were things I had to hold back.
I couldn't share that
for legal reasons.
There were things I had to hold
back.
Other
reasons were out there. I could share some things, but there were some things I just couldn't. Sometimes you have to put up certain walls, just to follow the ethics of your profession, just to follow the ethics, just to protect people. Perhaps even just some HR roles. There are things you just can't say.
Some HR roles,
and those things are necessary.
You just can't say.
And sometimes it keeps you from being as close to people as you would like to be.
Sometimes it keeps you from being as close to people as you would like to be.
As much as you can,
but as
legally,
much as
ethically,
you can. As much as you can,
emotionally,
legally, ethically,
open up to people, be able to relate to them.
Open up to people.
Without that,
be able to relate.
You wind up, getting right in the way of the wheels.
You wind up, getting right in the way of the
you're being part of the problem. Another thing, and this is to just slightly here play Forsaken's advocate, because I love to do that. I love to look at both sides of an argument when I'm weighing it out.
I love to do that. I love to look at both sides of an argument when I'm weighing it out.
The way the author portrays men and women, women really.
The way the author portrays men and women, women
make
really
men like infants, and men act like women are so mysterious. They're this whole other alien species.
Men act like women are just so mysterious. They're this whole other alien species.
I think is
some of that
is sort of a social outward reflection. I know where I come from, growing up in the rural South, sometimes you saw kind of similar relationship. When men were around other men, they would talk about their wives that way. I can't understand it. But in reality, they may open up to you. You hope they do.
But in reality,
definitely when women are around other women, they talk about men. He's just helpless. He can't do anything. A lot of it's just kind of our way of voicing our frustrations, or falling into the social patterns that we see around us. That's just how you talk about men. And that's the public face you put on, but in private it can be very different.
That's the public face
I know some couples that are very close, very open to each other about everything. Yet in public, you wouldn't think so. They're always, they're talking about these things kind of in a joking way sometimes, but
they're talking about these things kind of in a joking way sometimes.
They just don't understand women. Well, men are just I don't know how you ties your shoes in the morning.
I don't know how
things like that. So there may be some of that the author is trying to reflect, especially in the two rivers.
Some of that the author is trying to reflect, especially in the two rivers.
Publicly, you talk one way, and privately, you talk another.
Publicly, you talk one way,
part of it may be
talk another.
He's just trying to exhibit the brokenness of that relationship.
He's just trying to
but either way, I think at first I took it the former.
But either way,
it's just the way they talk in public, and I didn't think anything about it. Just like I grew up with a lot of people that way.
Yeah, well, that does. I did recognize it as something familiar when I read it too, and I think my for sure, but I still thought maybe my perspective on it was who knows what exactly he's trying to say with it. But another way of reading literature is kind of the idea of the death of the author, meaning that the text is the text. No matter what they intended, it can have a variety of different impacts, and so we can argue about what those are or whatever. So it's impossible to know exactly without having it in front of us right now. So we have to just go with what we've read, and we learn stuff from it that way, and I enjoy it. So I read it as I kind of assumed he probably was reflecting very typical, gender roles and way that people talk about gender roles, and it felt very familiar. But at the same time, it allowed me to think to be critical of those kind of stereotypes or ways that people speak. It probably for a lot of people is a way of just kind of commiserating, and that's a good way to read it. Kind of like the same way you would just complain to somebody about anything else that's relatable. Complaining about the weather. So I guess it would be a kind of an in-group way to strengthen social ties with each other, like you said, within the genders. But I also see it as a way to let's critique maybe, just like you said, if there are broken communication patterns in our own world, since this does look like the real world, and I see some of this leading to really sometimes funny but sometimes very frustrating communication problems. What can that teach us? Like maybe our jokes about men are like this and women are like that might teach younger folks and teach children that that's what they're supposed to be like. You might teach men that they really shouldn't bother trying to be good at housework because men are just bumbling oafs in the house and can't do that stuff anyway. Or you might be teaching girls that don't bother expressing your needs because you're a mysterious alien that men can never understand, so don't even bother trying to tell him. He's supposed to try to read your mind. So I think even with our jokes, we could just be letting off steam about these are some patterns that we see, and it's a relatable thing, but it could be seen as a way to kind of critically examine what kind of patterns am I falling into? Am I doing things that might be harming my relationships with my partner or my friends and family by falling into these kind of tropes? But who knows exactly what Robert Jordan was trying to say, but I think it's cool that we can take very different readings from this, and I just kept tying the gender politics to the magic system and thinking about it as we need to find a way to actually work together and communicate.
Right. Well, and we saw that's what happened in the Age of Legends.
Right.
It worked.
Well, and we saw that's what happened in the Age of Legends.
In the next age, after
hopefully we'll move to that in the next stage after Tarmangata.
Hey, if nothing else right now, we'll play Oprah and Dr. Phil. But hey, if nothing else right now, you have relationship problems, stop and look. Could your actions right now be the root cause of it?
Could your actions right now be the root cause of it?
One last thing before I finish up my part, and this will be all the notes that I have.
before I finish up
is
my part,
wondering
this will be all the
why
notes that I
Moiraine
have.
let her guard down
Is
concerning the Black
wondering
Aja.
why Moiraine let her guard
I
down
can only
concerning the Black
surmise that
Aja.
perhaps in the 20
I can only
years
surmise that
since
perhaps
she
in
fought
the 20
Marion and
years
had, you know,
since
all
she fought Marion and
the
had, you know, all
adventures,
the
and the right
adventures, and
I can only
right before
talk now.
she,
Sorry.
You're fine.
Right before
wow,
she
can I
she
talk now?
bonded
Sorry.
Rand Lan
fine.
as
Right
a
before
warrior.
she
You start all over.
bonded Rand as a
I
warrior.
wonder
You
sometimes
start all over.
now why
Okay.
Moiraine let her
I
guard
wonder
down
sometimes
concerning the Black
now
Aja.
why Moiraine let her guard
Here
down
we see
concerning
it's
the
been
Black
20
Aja.
years since she faced off with Marion.
Here we see it's
right
been
before
20
she
years since she
bonded
faced off
Lan
with
as a
Marion.
warrior.
It's right before she bonded Lan as a warrior.
Now we see, you know, maybe in that intervening
But
year she's not
now we see,
run into any
maybe
more
in that
Black Aja.
intervening year
She's seen no
she's
more
not
sign of
run
them,
into any more Black
nothing,
Aja.
because
She's
I'm
seen
sure
no
they stay
more, no more
hidden as
sign
much
of
as
them.
possible, and it would be
Nothing, because I'm sure they
difficult
stay
for a
hidden
young
as much as
Sedai to
possible,
root
and it'll
some
be
out.
difficult for
But
a
here,
young Estadai to root some out.
twice she
But
looks
here,
at
twice
Leandra and says,
she
you know, what is
looks
this girl up to?
at
What's going on with
Leandra and
her?
says, you know, what
And
is this
then
girl up
toward
to?
the ending of the
What's
chapter, you
going on
see
with her?
Leandra go
And
into
then
Lady
toward the ending
Amelissa's
of the chapter,
apartment,
you see
run
Leandra go
everybody
into
out, use
Lady Amelissa's
compulsion on
apartment,
her
run
to
everybody
try
out,
to
use
get
compulsion
her
on her
to
to
find
try
these
to
three young
get
men.
her
Of course, the
to
three
find
boys
these
from
three
Two
young men.
Rivers,
And of course, the
whom she
three
says are
boys from Two
more
Rivers,
dangerous than dark
whom she
friends.
says are
And it
more
becomes very
dangerous than
evident to
dark
me that
friends.
she is Black
And
Aja. And of
it
course,
becomes very evident
as
to
we're
me
reading the
that
story,
she
we
is
do
Black
discover
Aja.
that
And of
she
course,
is. But
as
I
we're
wasn't
reading the story, we
100%
do
sure
discover
because I
that she
couldn't
is. But
remember
I wasn't
if she
100%
was, over the,
sure
I guess,
because I
first
couldn't
time through,
remember
I couldn't figure out,
if she was
is she an Aes
over
Sedai
the, I
who's
guess,
just
first
taken
time
some
through. I
harsher
couldn't figure out
measures?
if
She's
she an Aes
using a
Sedai
light
who's just taking
compulsion
some
similar to
harsher
what
measures.
Right.
She's using a
Moraine
light
did,
compulsion similar to
back in
what
New Spring in the city of
Moraine did
Chaching.
you know,
When she
back
put
in
the
New Spring
fear
in the
in
city
that
of
woman's mind.
Chaching.
Yeah.
When she
Yes,
put the
yes.
fear
And so,
in
what
that woman's
Leandrin's doing is
mind.
not that
Yes, yes.
different in the
And
sense,
so,
except,
what Leandrin's doing is
it,
not
it
that different
seems
in the
so
sense,
insidious.
except,
Her,
it
it really paints
seems
her as a
so
bad guy.
insidious.
You know,
Her,
she
he
walks
really
in and,
paints her as a bad
she's
guy.
rude to
You know,
everybody and
she
just takes
walks
over
in
and
and,
is
she's
very
rude to
much
everybody and
manipulating
just takes over
Lady
and is
Amelissa. And of
very much
course,
manipulating
we didn't cover this
Lady
either
Amelissa.
because it's not
And
Moraine's
of
point of
course,
view, just as this
we
is
didn't
not.
cover this either
But I just
because
feel
it's
like
not
it's
Moraine's
pertinent to
point
the
of view,
upcoming
just as
parts of the
this is
story.
not. But I just feel like it's
We had
pertinent to
seen
the
at the
upcoming
very
part of the
beginning,
story.
the prologue of
We
this
had
book,
seen at the very
they have
beginning
the Dark
the
Friends
prologue of this
social
book.
gathering,
They have
Yeah.
and
the Dark Friends
we can
social
only
gathering,
surmise that
Yeah.
Leandrin Sedai
and
was
we can
one
only
of the Black
surmise
Aja
that Leandrin
representatives
Sedai
there.
was
Mm.
one
That
of
she
the Black
saw the
Aja
images of these three
representatives
young
there.
men, and
That
you've
she
got
saw
to,
the images of
whatever you
these
got to
three
do, you
young
drop
men.
everything, you go
You've
after
got
these
to,
three. You
whatever you
must
got to do,
deliver
you
them up
drop
to the
everything,
Dark
you go
Lord.
after these three. You
And
must deliver
so
them
when
up to
she
the Dark
sees them
Lord.
there, she's
And
very
so when
distracted
she
around
sees them there,
Moraine.
she's
Everything
very
else takes
distracted
second place.
around
She knows
Moraine.
she's got to go after these three,
Everything
and
else
she
takes
uses
second
Lady
place. She
Amelissa to do
knows
it.
she's got to
So
go after these
one of
three,
those
and
things,
she
again,
uses
it's not
Lady
from
Amelissa
Moraine's
to do
point of
it.
view,
So,
and so we
one of
didn't
those things,
tie it
again,
in
it's not from
directly, but
Moraine's point of
it
view,
very
and so
much
we didn't
impacts
tie it in
Moraine's part of the
directly, but
story
it very
beginning in the
much
very next chapter.
impacts
That's why I
Moraine's
wanted to
part of
bring
the
that out.
story
Yeah.
beginning in the very
Moraine,
next
why
chapter.
did
That's
you
why I wanted
forget
to bring
to
that
keep
out.
looking for Black Aja?
Moraine, why did you
Right.
forget
You should
to keep looking
remain
for
on
Black
guard
Aja?
about those.
You
It's
should
been 20
you should
years, but they're
remain
still out
on
there, and
guard
there's
about
more of them
those.
than you
It's
know.
been 20 years,
Right.
but they're still out there,
It's
and there's
our
more of them
first
than you know.
introduction in
Right.
terms of
It's our
a
first
published
introduction in
order
terms
read
a
of the Black
published
Aja.
order read.
And
Yes.
so
Of
that
the
it
Black
makes sense
Aja.
on a first time read.
And
But
so
having
that
read
it
New
makes
Spring, yeah,
sense
it
on a
does
first time read.
say,
But
wow, it
having
does
read
make you
New
say, why
Spring,
would
it
Moiraine
does
forget about this
say,
danger?
wow,
And,
it does make you say, why would
Leandrin is a
Moiraine forget about
pretty
this
clearly
danger?
coded villain.
And,
She's
Leandrin
suspicious
is a
enough that we're
pretty
like, wow,
clearly
she's a
coded
bad guy.
villain.
Even if
She's
she's just a
suspicious
mean
enough that
red
we're like,
Aja
wow,
and that's
she's
what
a
they're
bad
Right.
like,
guy. Even if
she's
she's just a
bad,
mean red Aja and that's
You
what they're
cannot
like,
like
she's
her
Um,
bad.
character. You just
You know?
right.
You
She's not one
cannot
that's
like
ever
her character.
shown
You
to
just
be
Right,
redeemable
right.
in
She's
any
not
way.
one
and her behavior is just automatically, Moiraine throws up, thinks about the red flags explicitly, even if we, the reader, wouldn't notice them, which I think many of us probably still would. It's interesting to me because I think some people view this series as being almost like proto young adult. So this was before young adult was like a separate genre, or really marketed that way. And so sometimes, like, your villains are pretty clearly told that they're villains. You know, when you have Selene, Lanfear, you know, masquerading as Selene, it's like there's obviously something up with this lady. A lot of it is laid on pretty thick, and so I know a lot of people who have read these stories as preteens or young teenagers, and that's where they first got into it. And I think part of that is some of the plot elements are heavy-handed enough that it's easy to follow, and Leandrin being a Black Aja member is one of those. So it does make you go, wow, really, Moiraine should know better. If we can tell she's bad, Moiraine should know better. But it's interesting that this series, despite having some heavy-handed plot elements to kind of hold your hand through it, it also has some gore and other stuff that would not make this like a young adult friendly series for some people. And so it kind of rides an interesting line there. And Leandrin is just one of those things that helps me notice that. It really stands out to me.
See, from a male point of view, it just reminded me that
from a male point of
she's
view,
really
it just
hot,
reminded
we
me
will
that
ignore all the
if
warning
she's
signs.
really hot,
That's
that's fair. We saw Rand and Loyal and Kieran ignore everything weird that Selene did. So yeah, that's fair.
And even Leandrin is described as kind of having a picture of beauty.
And even Leandrin is described as kind of having
my
a picture
mind,
of beauty.
she's hot. I'll ignore
So,
all the red flags,
my
all the
mind,
warning
she's
signs,
hot.
everything.
I'll ignore all the red
You left a bad
flags, all the
decision.
warning
Come here.
signs, everything.
So that's,
you know, that's
you
a really good
operate
point.
sometimes.
And you know, there is research to show that attractive people, regardless of the sex or gender of the people they interact with, people who are generally seen to be attractive do get away with more. So it shouldn't be enough to get past.
To research that.
Well, right?
Is that not obvious?
Had to research that.
You would think so. Yeah, a lot of social science is that way.
I mean, I have been treated wonderful all my life, and that's all I can attribute to.
I have been treated wonderful all my life, and that's all I can attribute it to.
So yeah,
thankfully, our listeners don't know what I look like, so they're
thankfully our
right?
listeners don't know what I look like, so
but I mean, you can look at like sentencing in courts, and you know, do the actual statistics. It does seem to be something that will be obvious to most people for sure. You got to go.
Yeah,
but
I've heard of those things, but I just
so yeah,
I've heard of those things.
It is realistic that she probably could get past other people, plus the Aes Sedai mystique and authority anyway. But yeah, Moiraine, you really should know better. She must just be distracted with, wow, what does Siwan want? What kind of trouble am I in? I got these seals in my pocket here. She really is very one-track minded, and I guess that's why.
Had there not been so much going on, she probably would have been following.
Had there not been so much going on, she probably would have been following
somehow.
Or something. There's some way eavesdropping on her somehow.
We can excuse her. She has a lot on her mind.
We can excuse her. She has a lot on her mind.
I kind of think
I guess that's a good place to leave our girl.
I'm not really old enough to be your father. I look like I am.
I'm not really old enough to be your father.
Well, that's because she's got the agelessness. You don't sell yourself short.
Well, that's because she's got the agelessness.
And we've watched her grow up in New Spring, and we're watching her do all this.
And we've watched her grow up in New Spring, and we're watching her do all this. I have this
when I first started the series, it was more of,
when I first started the series, it was
I would like to be around a girl like this, and now it's like, I would like to be around a girl like
this, and now
it's amazing how the years change your perspective.
Yeah, I think I identify with her a lot from reading New Spring because I was close to her age the first time I read it. So, and also in a similar stage of life, so kind of embarking out on my own. But yeah, so I still do, and so that's why I'm probably a little hard on her. Like, you should know better, Moiraine. I was there with you every step of the way.
You should know better, Moiraine. I was there with you every step of the way.
I'm all out of points, though. We're just gonna keep doing this thing in circles where we love Moiraine.
Oh yes, and I like doing it. So, well, that's all I've got.
Yeah, yes, and I like doing it.
I hope all of our listeners are still sticking with us, that we don't run you off. We've been fighting through technical difficulties, trying to improve the technology we use.
Difficulties trying
to study a little more about what we're talking about, just because we love what we're doing. We hope you enjoy it as well, and I hope you will in some way respond through Twitter, through any other way you can reach out to us.
Twitter,
letting us know what you think of this podcast.
Any other way you can reach out
for sure, and let us know who we should do next, because we've only got like 2 or 3 more Rain episodes left. So we need to do another point of view, and I was thinking that our Emmons Fielders take too much of the story, but it still seems like it would be a reasonable amount now that I looked at the percentages. I mean, Rand at the most is 20% of the series, which, I mean, that's only about I don't know what's 20% of 14. I'm not good at mathing on the spot, but really, it's not like having to reread the whole series like I thought it would be. So if we wanted to do Perrin or Egwene or Nynaeve or, you know, Matt, any of those, I'm pretty open to that too. I was hesitant at first, but I'm warming up.
Yeah, that'd be the equivalent of 3.5 books if I did that properly.
There you go. Yeah.
3.5 books.
I can do that, but I will start kind of a math problem when I'm speaking, and then I get this anxiety early in the sentence, like I won't be able to work it out by the time I get to that point in the sentence, and so because of the anxiety, I can't. I do it in front of my classes all the time. It's hilarious. I'm like, you get the idea. I can't math in my head quickly, but y'all do it. You got calculators in your head.
I can math or talk, but not both.
Yeah, pretty much.
I can math or talk, but not both.
Yeah.
So anyway, I hope all of you will join us next time for episode 13.
So anyway, I hope all of you will join us next time for episode 13.
You can find us on Podbean, Stitcher, Google Play Podcasts, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. You can also stay updated on Twitter at LaJaraSadai or subscribe to our YouTube channel of the same name. Tell them bye, Giskel.
Bye, Giskel.